right. Hi, everyone. I'm Gillette Smith, and I'm the Region 8 representative.
Hi.
And we're here tonight with Dr. Andrea McDonough. Sorry, how do I say it? I always say it wrong. I'm sorry.
McDonough.
I would always nix it and say Varner before, and now
I just like to keep it complicated, always thinking, yeah, it's McDonough.
I have a terrible lag going on right now, so if you see a lot of hesitation, it's because I'm not quite sure what's going on with my internet. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet and turn it over to Andrea, and I hope that everyone enjoys our lecture tonight and everyone's doing good and feels great over our first month in, almost.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, this is a sweet little group. So I am comfortable, just so you guys know, and if Gillette, if you're going to be on and watching, if you see any questions come through the chat, please feel free to ask a question or just to unmute whenever you feel that it's appropriate. If you want to stop and focus on something, I am happy to facilitate that for you guys. And I will just say thank you before we get rolling. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. So this is a topic that I'm passionate about, that I'm living and learning and teaching, within this content area. So like I said, I'm happy to stop and focus on anything that you guys would like to focus on. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I see Gillette still. Gillette, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that, the presentation slide? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about mindfulness, and the idea is that I'll give you sort of an overview, and then there will be an invitation to create just a little bit tonight. So if you don't have a pencil, pen, or writing tool handy, we're just going to do a short drawing activity together. So while we're getting started and warmed up, if you want to take a break and go and grab something to write with, that's the only thing you'll need. And your lungs, your breath. We'll breathe tonight. So we'll start by defining mindfulness, and then also creative mindfulness, which is my research focus. The needs and benefits of mindfulness practice, especially now. We'll connect to breath. I'll share 2 breathing exercises with you guys. We'll breathe together. We'll participate in a short drawing activity. I'll talk a little bit about a mindful approach to materials, and then there will be time for conversation and questions. So I'm sure that some of you have a baseline, at least, understanding of what mindfulness is. So thank you for listening along if this is old news to you. Jon Kabat-Zinn in 2003 provided a working definition of mindfulness as an awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment. And at that point, he added non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. So I simplify that for my students by saying it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. It's being here and being aware that you're here and not being anywhere else. That's it. So we use the breath a lot to come back to that moment. The non-judgmental bit is a little bit complex. So we tend to judge our emotions and judge our feelings. We associate positive and negative with whatever feeling that we're having. So with practice through mindfulness, really just building those neural connections to allow you to let a thought come and go without judging it. And that's not to say that that happens overnight, but to practice it and be aware of it is something really special. So adding to that definition, creative mindfulness becomes not only just, for an artist, the natural mindfulness that arises during any creative activity, but also directing that mindful attention at the process that you're participating in and your experience of it. So it's taking mindfulness and applying it really to any creative activity, but being really intentional about the way you're directing your attention. So directing it at the material and then how you're feeling as you are experiencing it. And that definition was provided by Wendy Ann Greenhalgh. She is an amazing lady, and I kept one of her books near. This was the book that really got me started learning about creative mindfulness. And it's Mindfulness and the Art of Drawing. So as I was researching, this was like my book by my bedside table. And that, yeah, it really, oh, I hear, is there a question or just feedback? Okay, I'll keep going here. So yeah, awesome book, highly recommend. So just a little bit of background here, why this is important. So in terms of stress and anxiety for our adolescent population, so aside from what grade level you're working with, those of you that are familiar with the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, as you look over the data from past years, there's been a change in some of the issues that are being reported by adolescents in our area in Pennsylvania. So anxiety disorders affect about 25% of children between 13 and 18 years old. If that goes untreated, those children become at risk to perform poorly in school, which makes sense, to miss out on social experiences, and also to engage in substance abuse. And what the data shows now is that the substance abuse piece is really, it's on a decline. And what's happening is that adolescents are reporting more, depressive symptoms and even suicide ideation. So that's kind of alarming that, we're seeing that shift in things to pay attention to with our adolescent population. And adults in the US specifically. So PTSD, I'll get to that too when we talk about our current pandemic situation, but PTSD affects 7.7 million adults, a significant portion of the population. And anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States, affecting 40 million adults in the US. Again, a significant portion of the population, 18% of the population. And an estimated 31.1% of US adults experience anxiety disorders at some time in their lives. So the reason this is significant is because mindfulness explicitly helps to decrease in some individuals. It's not a blanket fix, right? But helps to decrease anxiety. So I was really curious about what's happening now. Most of us, in some respect, are teaching during a global pandemic. What's emerging right now, so the connection to research is actually the topic is disaster mental health, which I thought was really intriguing. Disaster mental health. So we're in a state of disaster, right? It sounds extreme to say, I think, because we're becoming desensitized to so many odd things. But this research suggests that emotional distress will be experienced by any affected population during a disaster. And what's really interesting about right now is that the entire world is affected by what's happening. So in that instance, depressive and anxiety disorders may ensue. I mentioned PTSD before. So some of the symptoms that people are showing right now as a result of, what they've experienced throughout the pandemic, it's very close to PTSD, except for the individuals are experiencing it now, right? So it can't be diagnosed as PTSD because it's a virus. Like there's these stipulations just in diagnosing, which I thought was interesting. So what people are reporting right now, so aside from being just teachers, that we know what this feels like, stress, depression, irritability, insomnia. I've talked to so many people who could attest to that. Fear of the unknown, confusion, anger, frustration, of course, boredom, and the stigma that's associated with quarantine, and even the words like lockdown, the stigma that's associated with that. I found it to be quite intriguing that the CDC right now has a page on their website, how to cope with work stress during the pandemic. And actually on that page, they're recommending mindfulness for anyone who works, aside from just, essential workers, anyone who's working right now, like during this time. So the CDC recommends mindfulness. So some of you might be thinking about, maybe introducing this in your classroom. Perhaps you already have. What I think, there's a couple of things that I think are important to note. So embracing what mindfulness is, just as before we were teaching art in a classroom, we practiced it first, right? Before we were art educators, we were artists. And even when we prepare lessons for our students, we're going to practice first before we show a student, what to do, before we deliver a lesson and provide a demonstration. So if you have interest in this and sharing this with students, I think I support it wholeheartedly, 1,000,000%. But the recommendation is that you develop your own personal understanding of it, because it's so unique to the individual. So you develop your understanding of it first before you share, right? And incorporating mindful bits into your lesson makes so much sense. Just, the invitation is to practice it first, and just so you're comfortable with it, so that as students have the experience, you can authentically develop that relationship with the students as they're learning something with you. So before introducing mindfulness in your classroom, cultivate your own practice. This is a way of being. It's not just a tool or a technique. This is a way of taking something, a way of being, and applying it to different facets of your life. Applying it in the art room makes sense because we're in a space that's more creative. Students feel safe in our space. They're more open to new things. So it makes perfect sense to use that as a segue into it. But it's so much more than just a tool. There are several ways of doing that for yourself. Regular yoga practice can be a way. So yoga is seen as more than just, okay, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to get on a mat and move around, but actually approaching it as a mindfulness practice. So taking that time to put your technology away, to really just be present on your mat, to do mindful movement, to connect your breath with your movement. That is practicing mindfulness, mindful movement. Daily meditation might be something that's comfortable for you. There are a ton of apps that people love, to get started doing that or bringing that into your day. Having a moment, even just a 3-minute breathing space, a 3-minute meditation, perhaps over your lunch, is a perfect way just to bring in that gentle meditation. And make it a routine. There are so many free, in most cases, mindfulness-based stress reduction courses. I'm participating in one right now that's actually global. There were some participants that were trained at Brown University, and they're all over the world. So Saturday morning, I connect with people from Singapore, people from Australia, people from London, and we're in this, just experience together. So highly recommend that. And that's something too that Wendy Ann Greenhalgh, who I referenced with the definition of creative mindfulness, that's sort of what she recommends, so have your own practice, but to take an 8-week course makes a whole lot of sense too. There are several programs now, mindfulness in schools trainings, that are rather cost effective. Some districts pay for them as part of your professional development. So I think that they're fantastic. I did a mindful schools training. They're great. as long as you can, commit the time to do it. And you're providing yourself with that time to log in and to learn, and then to have just that either an introduction, or some of them provide advanced courses to bring the mindfulness practice into your classroom. Okay, so we're gonna breathe, and I can't see you guys, and that is totally fine. So with any invitation to breathe or meditate in the classroom, I often, I invite students, so this is like trauma-informed language. I invite students to close their eyes if they want to, right? So it's an invitation, not an instruction, because closing your eyes can be a trigger for some students. Even being careful with, and this is going to sound so silly, but being careful with word choice. So I try very hard not to use the term deep breath. So the word deep can be a triggering word to students who have experienced trauma. And that sounds like, okay, well, what do I say instead? If I can't say deep breath, that's what I mean, but just say full breath. So you're taking a full inhale and a full exhale, as opposed to take a deep breath. It's just like, again, one of those practices, the more you try it out, the easier it gets. So just a note too about posture. And I think that I'm not sure if I'll be able to share this with you guys after, and it's a small group. I could even take down your emails if you want access to this presentation. I'm not going to run this meditation, but the 3-minute breathing space is a great one. But we're going to do square breathing. So your posture, you want to be seated. I'm actually going to scoot my chair back. I have short legs. So when I am seated, normally my feet dangle. So having your feet firmly planted on the ground, so that you can feel your feet flat on the ground. Your seat should be comfortable. Your spine should be straight, right? So not like it's like overly erect, but just a straight spine. Your hands should be on your thighs, on your lap, and close to your belly. If you sit with your palms facing up, well, you could either have your palms facing up or facing down. I like to say, try it out and see what feels right first. But if you're feeling more open, palms facing up makes more sense. If you're feeling like you need to be grounded, if you're a little bit flighty and you need a little bit of stability, place your palms down on your thighs. So just find your comfortable seat. In the classroom, I sometimes use sticky notes for this activity, just because it is a square. You could have students place the sticky note in their sketchbook or on a piece of paper and actually trace with a drawing tool for this, if you'd like. I sometimes just have them trace the square with their fingers as they go through, or to draw a square in the air. So what we're going to do is inhale for the count of 3, hold for the count of 3, exhale for the count of 3, and hold for the count of 3. So I'll walk you through 3 times, and then I'll invite you to do that 3 times on your own. Again, close your eyes if you'd like. So inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Exhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Exhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. On your own, And when you're finished, just take a full inhale and a full exhale. And in the classroom, I like to ask students what they notice about their breath, before a practice like that, and then after, and ask them how they're feeling before and after. And 9 times out of 10, it's I feel calm now. Sometimes it's I feel tired, which is closely connected. So that's square breathing. And that just doing that as a centering activity before any practice, it's such an easy thing and becomes part of the routine. The next breathing activity is a little bit more complicated, and I'll demonstrate for you guys. So alternate nostril, it's called Nadi Shodhana. And essentially, so this is where things could get a little bit out there. So the left side of your body, and I know some of you practice yoga, I recognize some of the names here. The left side of your body is your lunar side, your moon side, your calm side. And the right side of your body is your solar side, your sun side, your energy side. So what's interesting at first, and you could try this if you'd like, to take your thumb and close off your right nostril and breathe through your left. And just notice how it feels. Switching it to the right, and I use my pinky, closing off your left nostril, breathing in, and exhaling through your right nostril. And just noticing if one side feels different. Normally, and here we are, it's getting a little bit darker a little bit later, it would be assumed that unless your energy is super high at this time, it would be assumed that your left side would be a little bit stronger, a little bit easier to breathe through. Sometimes in the morning too, the left side is stronger, and then in the afternoon, the right side becomes stronger. So this is what it looks like. Now I use my thumb and my pinky to alternate to close off. The official mudra looks something like this, like you have your middle finger and your ring finger actually on your forehead, and you switch this way. For me, I don't like having my hand on my forehead, so I just use my thumb and my pinky. So we'll begin. And again, feet flat on the floor, standing or sitting up tall. This is my hand position. I'm going to start by closing off my right nostril, and I'm going to inhale. I'm going to hold that, switch, close off my left, exhale, and then inhale through my right, hold, close off the right, exhale, inhale through the left, hold, switch, exhale, inhale, hold, switch, exhale. And I'll give you just a minute to continue on your own. And complete whatever cycle you're on. Try to end with an exhale on the left. Wonderful. So this is another one. I find that in the secondary classroom, I like this one a little bit better because you can see that students are participating. I sometimes give students the option with the square breathing to just visualize. And so I like knowing that I can see them touching their face with sanitized hands, of course. And we've done this as a mask break in some of the classes too. So that's been nice. So that's alternate nostril breathing, also called in Sanskrit Nadi Shodhana. So the benefits, and there are so many benefits listed in research for mindfulness in general, but for breathing specifically, increased lung capacity is one benefit of really any breathing practice. Reduced blood pressure, reduced heart rate. With every exhale, if your exhale is longer than your inhale, your heart rate will decrease. So even, we did 3 counts for this square breathing. If you were to say, okay, inhale for 3, hold, exhale for 4, that's another way to adapt that for yourself or for students as well. And then improved academic achievement. We're going to improve the improvement. Sorry about that error. So improved academic achievement as well. So it allows students to focus, right? So if we come back to the breath, and this could take 2 minutes, right? This could be bell ringer time. So, starting a class like that, bringing the energy down if you need to, up if you need to, it allows the students to focus and to move forward. So there are so many other ways to practice breath in the classroom or for yourself, but those are 2 ways that I wanted to show you tonight. So Stop, Look, Breathe, Create. Some of you might be familiar with that book. I know we did a book study locally. So again, Wendy Ann Greenhalgh, this is her method. So taking the mindfulness and just giving it a strategy to remind yourself of how to process through. So stop is literally stopping. It's finding the pause, to look, to observe. So not just looking with your eyes, but sensing your environment, connecting to the breath, which could be through any breathwork technique, and then going on to your creative activity, right? So Stop, Look, Breathe, Create. She has an awesome challenge that it's called the 3 challenge that she has on her website, which I have the link at the end of this presentation too. So another way to look at that, and it just depends on how you like to remember it. The STOP method, which has been in effect for quite a while in older research, so stop or pause, take a breath, observe, proceed. So this isn't just for art, but we can modify that. I like to think about it with photography. So stop, take a breath, observe, and then take a photo. So, either way, I think it's nice to have those things to remember, and especially for students, if there's a day where like a student just needs to get something on paper, we'll stop first, pause, remember where you are, connect to your breath, sense the space around you physically to bring you back there, and then proceed to do the thing you need to do. So I'm a big fan of both of those. I use the terminology interchangeably, really. Okay. So there are a lot of resources, to explore meditation paired with drawing. Sometimes in the classroom, it can be a little bit intimidating at first to do a longer meditation and then be asked to do a drawing activity. So I like this, what we're going to do together. I'll guide you through. Just like getting comfortable, connecting to your breath. And then essentially we're just going to draw lines that are connected with the breath. So following each exhale, you're going to make a mark. So once I get you guys started and guide you, I'll give you some time and we'll end with the bell. So I'll instruct you to get started. I wanted to test before we get engaged in the activity. And let me see, I can see Gillette. I'll just be looking for a thumbs up here. Let me know if this sound is like a good sound or if it sounds really like awful on the computer. So I'm just gonna ring a bell here. Can you hear that? Okay, pleasant, like, she gave me a thumbs up. So I'm gonna, okay, yeah, we're good, okay. I just didn't want it to be an unpleasant noise. That's gonna be your cue to stop, and I don't want it to be like, ah, yeah. Okay, super. So anytime you're preparing for a drawing activity or a meditation paired with a drawing, just make sure you prepare your space first, right? You make sure you have your tools in order. You want things that are close by. If you're doing a more formal meditation where maybe your eyes are closed, having everything within your reach. So for this, really, you could use a small, I have some sticky notes that are nearby. I might make some marks on my paper behind me, but just having everything close by. I think it's lovely to have technology out of mind. So obviously we're on a Zoom, but if you have your phone close, turn it over so it doesn't disrupt you. We see that, of course, with high school students often. So keep, you don't have to worry about anything. You've committed your time to being here right now. And I promise I won't let you draw for an hour. I'll let you draw for 5 minutes. So I'll keep the time. You don't have to. Be in a comfortable seat, whatever that is for you. Trying to find a space without interruptions and the time without interruptions, which I know can be a challenge in my world. And again, in the classroom, reminding the students that they have time, however, if it's an hour, if it's 40 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, however long they have with you, they're gifted that time to create. And they don't need to worry about anything else, so the time without interruptions. And I do use, I bring about trust because some of the meditations, if you're invited to close your eyes, you have to kind of trust that the person in the room is going to keep you safe. So trusting that it's an experience that while it can bring up some emotional response, like any meditation can, that you're in a safe space and you have the resources to help you through it. Okay, so find your breath. So if it's sitting in your comfortable seat again, and just feeling, sensing your body. So you might notice, how your feet feel on the floor. Maybe you're wearing socks, maybe your feet are bare. You might notice the temperature of your feet and sort of sense what your legs feel like. You can pay close attention to the shins, to the knees, and sort of sense up your body to your seat. And noticing, sometimes there's tingling. Notice any sensation that that arises. And I want you to think about what it feels like to breathe. Just bring your attention to your breath. If it helps to put your hand over your heart, maybe a hand on your belly, just to feel what happens in your body. The chest might rise and fall. If you're taking a full breath, you might feel your belly fill with air. We don't take full belly breaths often throughout our day, so if you haven't done that yet, please do. And as you're following that breath, as you feel that breath flowing, bring your attention to your arms. And as you breathe, see if you can feel the breath, feel the movement or the wave of your breath down through your arm, perhaps into your fingertips. And when you're ready, begin making marks. So that might look like taking an inhale and making a straight line. On the exhale, following the exhale all the way down. That might look like a circle. Following the exhale all the way around. If you like, if your drawing materials are close by, you may close your eyes. There are no expectations here. And we'll have just a few minutes to create. And while you're creating, I will as well. Continue until you hear the bell. So welcome back. If you were getting lost in the meditation there, I hope you were. Um, I I like to use just this connection to, each line equal to one breath. I've even done it for class periods where I say, continue until you fill your page or until, you feel like it's time to stop. I think it can be just, it's just like with yoga, connecting that movement to the breath just keeps everything in sync, and bringing your attention to the connection of that movement allows you to stay in the present moment. So that's even, again, I mentioned, doing a meditation over your lunchtime, if it's something that, when you find a quiet space in your day, even just doing a simple activity like that can be enough to bring you back. So I hope you enjoyed that exercise. And so I want to share just a little bit about one of the first times I did this with a group of students. So the group that inspired me really to pursue serious research on creative mindfulness, we did some guided meditations in class. It was an AP class. And we were living through, we were having a lived experience that was full of trauma and a lot of loss during a school year. And I've asked these students if it's okay that I have their photos in here. But they often, it was about a 20-minute meditation that we would do as an introduction. And they would just describe feeling like a complete reset had happened. And they were really comfortable with, knowing that the lines on their paper didn't need to look like anything. This meditation that they did wasn't just straight lines. It was, their eyes were closed nearly the whole time. It was a full body scan. So really bringing attention to every part of the body, and then connecting the breath to the line without instruction. And I think that that's really, for me, it's always very interesting to say, to test a student's tolerance of ambiguity. We're all being tested with that right now in our world, but to let go of what the expectations are. The drawing, the work doesn't need to look like anything. It's truly about the process of connecting your breath to your work. So this group was really special to me, and I have their scribbles saved here. Oops, I went too far. Generally speaking, if you're a practicing artist, or really taking a mindful approach to any material that you're using in the classroom, thinking about it with just experiencing the material for the first time. So I found that students are more drawn to watercolor because of the fluidity of it, because of the nature of it. It's easy, it's accessible. So maybe a student's like really quick to get out their watercolor palette, their praying, watercolor palette, and start painting. And that can be really rewarding, doing a quick wet and wet wash, and just like allowing colors to run through the wet space on the paper, to let go of that control, to not need to control it, can be an exercise in and of itself. But what might happen, even bringing in a new material, an odd material, a material that's not often used in the classroom. So that might be, maybe it's liquid watercolor, maybe that's common in your classroom, maybe it's, a watercolor pencil, but something that's not standard, and really focusing the attention of the student or of yourself on that material, really thinking about that. But yeah, I keep coming back to watercolor, and students seem to be drawn to watercolor as well. Again, designing a lesson, as with a watercolor experience as the base, you can take that really anywhere. So, thinking about if you are applying mindfulness to the exploration of any material, really taking the time almost, as an exercise to observe the material. So taking it in your hand and feeling it. What's the weight of it? What does it look like? What does it smell like? I had a student, actually, I think it was today, she opened her watercolors for the first time, and she's like, can I please take my mask down to smell the watercolors? I'm like, absolutely. So what does it feel like? Some students, with tactile aversions, what does chalk pastel feel like? Can you handle it? Well, yeah, what's the weight in your hand? Even thinking about the way the material is applied to the surface. So when I was making lines while you guys were making lines, I really I'm a sucker for these like Higgins ink pens. I love them. So the sound that makes on the surface, there's a couple things that that I bring my attention back to. The sound that it makes on the paper, compare that to the sound of graphite on paper, the sound of charcoal on paper. Also, the way that there's tiny flecks of ink that sort of, sputter and splatter as the line is drawn. Bring your attention to little things like that, noticing it. It might not be perfect, but noticing those imperfections and really embracing that and just bringing awareness to it. Thinking about what you notice. So if you were to do, a meditation with your eyes closed and you're creating or drawing, noticing what you observe about your response when you open your eyes and see what you've made. So, it's sort of, I liken it to taking a walk away from your painting that's frustrating you and coming back to it with fresh eyes. Imagine you're having the experience for the first time. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Like I said, with the tactile aversion, I struggle with charcoal and chalk. And I tell my students, I'm like, I have goosebumps on my arm because I'm showing you chalk and it's in my hand and I'm touching it. So noticing that, what is it about that that's pleasant or unpleasant for you? Why do you feel that way? And yeah, thinking about just approaching it with beginner's mind, the term shoshin, so seeing everything for the first time, perhaps even having students describe a material as if they're describing it to an alien from outer space, using that analogy. So how would they describe that to someone who's never experienced the material before? So again, this can be applied to anything. I won't say that this is how I approach every project that I do, of course. But when you're feeling like you need a little bit of mindful attention in your life, this is one great way, just to focus on material. So again, bringing that attention on purpose to the present moment, and then without judging it. Okay, right. My goosebumps, I embrace them when I have them, from using chalk and charcoal. Wonderful. Oops. So some of these resources that I had in here, I've worked with some veterans groups. So just like some attention to mental health, the art of mindfulness, and I have to be honest with you, I didn't check this link. I know that Wendy Ann was suffering with some health issues, non-COVID related, but she was turning over some of her social media to other handlers. So you can find her certainly on Instagram and on Facebook as well. There's some groups, some drawing groups that have been established under her direction, which is really cool. Yeah, the art materials link, you guys know where to go. I do always add in the suicide prevention hotline, just like something that's near and dear to my heart. And especially in a time like this where, yeah, the isolation and just the ambiguity, the uncertainty of, the way we're teaching, the way we're living, the way we're raising families and connecting or not connecting with people. This is a real issue. And so just, to not be afraid to talk about it and to find a therapist. And again, like this is information that I think, you know, talking about students with mental health, or you know, about mental health issues with students, reduces the stigma. And again, it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart. And it's not to say that the bell ringer each day is, you know, what is suicide ideation? Like, that's not it. But creating a safe space so that students can come to you and talk to you and ask questions. So I have so much that I could continue to share with you guys, but I wanted to check and see if there are questions. So right now, we have a course that has been designed as a result of the research on secondary creative mindfulness, and the course is entitled Mindful Art. So that's been really great. It's in its second year, so its pilot year was interrupted by the pandemic. So we got one semester in. So it feels good to be back at it with that course. We're in my district. We're using Schoology as an LMS, so that's been an adventure to build in these resources and materials for hybrid learners and remote learners at the same time. So I can talk about, you know, how we're doing that with the Mindful Art course, you know, in particular. And yeah, happy to answer any questions at all. And really, you could feel free to unmute if you have anything, and if you don't, there's no pressure.
I have a question about when you're doing this in a classroom with students. I teach elementary at the moment, so it's probably a lot different than you. But if you have kids that are really anxious and maybe they just don't feel comfortable at all doing it, or maybe they'd rather just do it at home in private, how do you handle that with those kids?
Perfect. Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to visit some of the elementary classrooms, and you know, I've really just brought in an introduction to mindfulness for those classes. And so really, I usually start with the square breathing, but having a singing bowl is like magic. So doing some mindful listening as a way of focusing the attention, like that, I mean, it truly is magical. So I like to start with that so that they understand that really focusing your attention, paying attention to the sound as it becomes more quiet. I think that's a great way to bring it in. What the lesson that I've done, and I actually have done this in Gillette's, I think fourth grade classroom, and I was in a second grade classroom with another just classroom teacher. I talk about what mindfulness is just very basically, right? It's paying attention right now, you know, kind of lighthearted, and then doing some mindful listening. I like to talk about, you know, what's happened before. Like maybe there's something that happened yesterday. You know, did you get upset yesterday about anything, or did anything bad happen? You know, and of course that could open up a can of worms. But trying, you know, and maybe it does, and that's okay. You know, as long as you're ready to handle that. You know, did anything bad happen? Well, I was late for the bus, and then my mom was mad because we had to drive to school. You know, whatever it is. So focusing that, you know, something that happened in the past, something negative, right? So giving that label of negativity. I have them put that on like a little piece of paper, and then reminding them to come to the present, right? And then we take a little circle and cover the thing that happened in the past. And it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, you know, but bringing our attention back to the present moment. And I know, yeah, in the curtain classroom, I brought in gel pens because I try to bring in materials that, especially like regular classroom teachers normally don't have gel pens, but, and you know, a classroom art teacher might be like, oh, don't touch my gel pens unless it's a special day, you know, which I totally get. I do that in the high school classroom too. But yeah, so bringing in a material and then just asking them to like mindfully grow patterns on top of that, you know, so having an art experience and like gently, you know, bringing in those concepts, I think can be really, really fantastic. So, you know, the question, you know, is it too heavy? It can be heavy, you know, and our students, most children have some degree of trauma. I mean, truly, there's something that's happening, you know, that's traumatic in their lives. So, you know, another option would be to bring in, you know, if you're in a district where perhaps like you do have more at-risk students, and you think that that would be, you know, a triggering activity, bringing in your counselor, you know, and just like introducing it that way. But yeah, doing it, you know, in kind of a lighthearted way. Using sound, I think, is an excellent way. The other thing is to use food. And obviously now is not the time, perhaps, you know, but giving a child a piece of chocolate and asking them to bring their attention to that piece of chocolate that's in their hand, that's wrapped up, you know, and what does it feel like? What does it smell like? Well, now you're going to unwrap it, but don't eat it yet, you know, and really noticing that. And instead of just eating it, what if you touch to your lips first? And what happens next, you know, when you don't chew, but just let the chocolate go into your mouth. So, so mindful eating can be really, you know, it can be highly effective for all ages, you know, just bringing your attention. I just did, you know, a couple Saturdays ago, it was mindful eating with a raisin. So the participants were asked to bring 2 raisins, right? Which is the funniest thing. So bring 2 raisins, and to do that activity, to really think and feel, and then to allow a raisin to be in your mouth without chewing it is like one of the most interesting things, you know, to really feel the ridges of something that you would just grab a handful of. So, so doing those, you know, those alternative methods of bringing the concept in, I think makes a lot of sense, rather than just saying, I want you to be mindful and we're going to meditate, you know, but starting with sound, I think, is really effective. And basic yoga things too, you know, even just, so, you know, seated posture, as you inhale, raise your arms up. As you exhale, raise your, you know, put your arms back down. So even just that, connecting the movement to the breath is bringing the attention to the breath and to the body. So bringing it into the present. Yeah, thanks for the question, Melissa. Any other questions? Anything you're wondering at all?
I was wondering, this is Bess Lowry. I also teach elementary. You referenced the singing bowl, and I may have missed when you talked about that. I wasn't quite clear on what you meant by the singing bowl.
Sure. So, so when I brought you guys back from your drawing meditation, so so a Tibetan singing bowl, the sound resonates and vibrates, and I mean, you can get into some pretty specific qualities. So when you strike the bowl, and I'll do it back here so you guys don't hear. When you strike the bowl, the sound vibrates at a specific frequency. So and it continues, so it's still making sound. You can also it might not be pleasant through the computer, but you can allow that sound to continue to sing. So if some children, you know, I've maybe had in my experience, like maybe 1 or 2 that are like, oh yeah, my mom has one of those, or, you know, something like that. But the vibration of the sound, it's a unique experience that most students haven't had, you know, even in music class. This particular bowl, and so music is not my specialization, I just love it. But whatever frequency it is, it connects to the heart chakra. So again, that might be a little bit touchy-feely, but it's for me, it's really interesting. So when you are in a space where you are, you know, surrounded by sound, you'll notice that the frequency like hits you at different places. So this particular one is connected to the heart chakra, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you what note it is. But it's interesting because even with young students, I've asked them where they feel it in their body, and usually they feel it in their heart. So if it would be like the throat chakra, you might feel that vibration more in your throat. If it would be the crown chakra, and again, these are just different frequencies and it might be a different size bowl. And this is something, Amazon.com or probably your local music distributor would be able to help you out with if it's something that you're interested in. I heard that if anybody's Williamsport local, one of my students, my former students, came in and told me that there's a place close by. I think it's called Heart and Soul. And she was telling me all about the bowls, the singing bowls that were there. And she was very excited to tell the owner of the store that she used one of those in her art classroom. So yeah, a nice gentle way to get students engaged and to practice mindful listening. And again, for yourself too. It's a very pleasing sound, I think. My kids love it. Thanks for your question, Bess. Any other questions or wonderings?
Andrea, we had one in the chat.
Oh, thanks.
And it reads, I met a large group of people. So in reference to the breathing exercise, could there be too big of a group for that particular lesson?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. That's an interesting question, just in relation to to what we're dealing with right now. I would say a group no larger than 25. But yeah, no, I don't think so. So I've been in groups where, with adults that, a group of up to 100 people that are learning, a mindfulness meditation all at once. And it's amazing how quiet things can get, when adults are invited to bring their attention to the present moment. And yeah, it's not for everybody, not all adults love it. I'm assuming you guys are here because there's an interest, but you might say mindfulness to a coworker and they might say, you're a little funny, aren't you? So no, I don't think, I've done these exercises in big classes of, 25, 30. Yeah, the one class that I had last year, I think was 28 large kids, like high school kids. And no, like it's always really interesting to me. I don't start with something like that. I wouldn't say, welcome to day one, now we're going to breathe. I wait and build rapport a little bit before I invite them to do something that I think might be uncomfortable. But no, I wouldn't put a limit to the number of students. Now, if you wanted to hold an assembly, let's say whenever we can do that again, let's say it's your K through 3 assembly, and perhaps, there's an invitation to do a breathing exercise. Well, it might be, you would gauge it, maybe cut it a little bit short if you find that the attention is starting to dwindle. But no, with a short meditation, I think, or a short breathing exercise, if you're talking about 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I wouldn't be concerned with the number of students. If you're doing a longer exercise or a longer meditation, I would be hesitant. Again, like you want to almost build up to that. And that goes for adults and students as well. I've had feedback from some students who think that 20 minutes is too long, so diving right in with a 20-minute breathing exercise might be a little bit too much, but just bringing attention to breath. Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to do that with a large group. Yeah. Thanks, Gillette, for bringing that to my attention. Cool. Did I miss any others? Oh, nice. Julia, that said the hold part was difficult. Yeah, and that's that can be anxiety inducing. And I found that a lot of students, especially with mask wearing, having that cover over their nose like that, like you feel like you're holding your breath a lot. A lot of us are shallow breathing all day long. So these like breath work exercises become so much more crucial. But yeah, that's true. Sometimes the whole part. And so if that's a trigger for you, don't do it, right? Just like continue, just like see how you can turn your breath into a wave. So when you get to the top of your inhale, then just go right into your exhale and don't hold. You know, if you decide that pranayama is a practice that you want to embrace, then you might build up to something like that. You know, hold for 1 second, you know, then hold for 2, then hold for 3. Yeah, I like the Gillette you mentioned, you know, using the exercise in your commute to school. So one of the things that I try to do, and I think that it's safe, to practice mindfulness when I'm driving. So if I'm in the car, and that doesn't mean I always turn my music off, but sometimes I do, just like really just putting my hands on the steering wheel and feeling what it feels like to touch the steering wheel. You know, what do my feet feel like? Am I comfortable in my seat? Does my back hurt from, you know, from being on my feet all day? Did I wear the wrong shoes? You know, but bringing my attention to the driving experience, you know, looking around, observing, but also feeling and sensing at the same time. So I think the car is a wonderful time to practice mindfulness. Yeah, we got Julia's question. Thanks, Gillette. Yeah. And Julia said about observational drawing. So that's perfect. And in fact, I have my students, semester students, doing that right now. So finding just a connection to breath, you know, centering before you begin, stop, look, breathe, create, or stop, observe, stop, take a breath, observe, proceed, and then really focusing on one object. And like we were talking about with just any material, take an object and put it in your hand, you know, and maybe it still is my pen that's close by, you know, and feeling it first. And I like to do observational drawing that way anyways, you know, putting your hands on the material first so you know what that you need to draw those extra ridges, and then, you know, creating a quiet space that allows the students to explore that. Yeah. Oh, could you ever have so many students that you have too many? Oh, okay. Got it. I think we got that one. Cool. Oh, thanks, Melissa. Mindfulness Spell is a free app. Yeah, to try it. Cool. Good idea. There's a lot. Insight Timer is one that's come up in a couple of podcasts that I've listened to. I don't have it, you know, myself. The Calm app, I know, has had educator deals in the past. Yeah, so like there's a lot of great apps depending on like what avenue you want to focus on. Again, if it's mindful movement, I used to use an app in the morning. It was like a yoga alarm. And so, you know, the alarm would go off in the morning very gently and softly and wonderfully. And then it would invite you to like roll out of bed and start, you know, your asana practice. It didn't last long, but yeah, so there's a lot of great apps, and apps are a wonderful way to experiment and explore. I tend to feel like when I have that commitment, it gets overwhelming when I have the app like that sends notifications like, well, did you meditate today? So, you know, if you use that as a way to build in the routine and then break away from that, I think that's good practice. Some people like the timers just for the sound too. Yeah, great. Any other questions that you guys have? Anything else that that you'd like to talk about or that you're wondering? One thing I wanted to mention, and I didn't touch upon it before, and you guys are all professionals and wonderful, but I always find that it's important to note the difference between art therapy and therapeutic art education. So I know some of you have heard me say that before. So this type of practice I would consider therapeutic art education. So we are all capable of providing that to students, and most of us do that. It's our nature. But I always kind of like it's one of my triggers, I guess, when I see, you know, something offered as art therapy, and you can get a lot of resources from art therapy books for sure. But just being careful not to categorize unless you are licensed. not to categorize, an activity as art therapy. Of course, it sounds good, it sounds great. Like, yes, I need art therapy, but just being mindful of that, not to misuse the terminology, but to embrace therapeutic art education at all costs. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, just a little, I'm a stickler for terminology. Yeah, Gillette, can you think, is there anything else that, anything else that would be good to cover before we close?
I just want to say thank you. I really always enjoy you talk of mindfulness, and I will contest that when Andrea visited our classroom, it was 4th grade, and I think she saw a class that had every single emotion. It was great. Like we saw so many highs, we saw so many lows, but we saw the kids push through those walls and those boundaries. And I know that it was really helpful for me to start to build my rapport with those kids. And it really was a turning point in our classroom, and just with their classroom management. And it really does wonders. A lot of our students that I work with in our building, they just deal with trauma a lot throughout their lives. And it's hard to see them struggle with it. So it's really nice to just be that calm and that center place for them to come to. So, all right.
Yeah, and when we're ever able to visit schools again, I'm always happy, like literally always happy to travel and visit. We will have remote Fridays, so if you guys, are interested in learning more or want support, please feel free to contact me, and I'll put my email in the chat. So if you're interested in, if you just want a copy of the PowerPoint or the presentation, I'm happy to share that with you guys too, and be in touch if you need anything. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you all for being here tonight. I know that this is a busy time for everyone, so thank you for committing the time. I hope that it was valuable to you, and yeah, I encourage you to practice and be in touch with anything that you might need. Awesome.
All right. Is Jill still on?
I don't think she is. I think she said it was okay for you to close the meeting
Okay.
for all whenever you're ready.
All right. All right. I thank you guys. Yes. Namaste. Thank you. We are going to stop the recording. I'm pretty sure that the recording will also be up on the PAEA blog site. So you can look for that if you want to revisit any of the information that you saw tonight. And thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.